Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Lori. Today I wanted to do a video on timelines, collapsing timelines, false realities, linear time, and how we are shifting out of the way we have been viewing and experiencing time as we shift into higher states of consciousness. So for those of you that are new to my channel, welcome. Thank you for being here. A little bit about me. I channel or I connect and communicate with higher dimensional light beings. I call them star beings. And so all my information comes from them. And everything I'm taught, everything I'm given, everything I share on my channel is directly downloaded from them and from my client sessions. So I do a lot of client sessions where I introduce the clients to their what I consider or call star families. And so this is where all my information comes from. And I've been playing around with time for a couple months now. And it's a challenging subject for me to dissect and talk about because it's complicated. And it can be challenging to really grasp with our own kind of dense third dimensional minds. Time is a really complicated one, I think. But as we are shifting into higher states of consciousness, not only are we beginning to experience time shifting, but we're able to start to grasp it a little bit. At least that's been my experience. And this has been since August. I've been really starting to kind of understand what's happening. So I'll do my best to explain it in the way that I can, in the most elementary way. And I think it's important to understand time and linear time and quantum time, and time doesn't even exist in the quantum world, in the quantum field, but it's important to understand what's happening so that we can move into these higher states of consciousness with more ease and grace and not hold on to how we have been designed in this third dimensional matrix to live. So let me start by saying that when energy moves or shifts into higher states of consciousness or higher frequencies, which then becomes higher dimensions, the energy spins, right? And as it spins, it increases its velocity, which increases its frequency, which increases its dimension. Third dimension is very, very low. It spins our energy inside of our body. The energy around us and in our matrix is at a very low vibration. Because of that low speed at which our energetic fields and the energetic field that's around us spins, it's slow. And because it's so slow, we're capable of experiencing time. And not only experiencing time, but experiencing it in a very slow format, what we call linear format. So you can imagine that as energy slows down, as consciousness slows down, it's almost like when you're watching a movie or listening to a song or something, you slow the speed down and it becomes slower and slow, and the words start to get longer, and it's like that funny cartoon thing. That's what happens when energy slows down. It literally stretches into a linear line. And if you could imagine speeding up that video or that song, right, and it goes faster and faster and faster and faster and faster, then all of a sudden the song that was 3 minutes is now 20 seconds, right? And it's just super fast. And so that this linear timeline collapses, right? Because it's speeding up. So that's what's happening with us. So we live in a third dimensional matrix in reality. Our third dimensional frequency spins pretty slow. And so we have been living on a linear timeline. What does this mean? Imagine that there's just one long line. And here we are as light beings in physical form on this linear time frame, this linear time. And as we move through our days, we are energetically connected to our past. And we are energetically connected to what we think is our future, right? Of course, we know that many times what we think our future is really isn't. But we are energetically connected to it because we are on this linear timeline, right? And this is all that exists. Time only exists in this one frame. So we have thought for a very long time. And this has caused a lot of struggle, a lot of pain, a lot of trauma, right? Because if you're in one timeline and that's it, you are going to stay connected to everything that has happened to you in your past, and you are going to stay connected to what you want, think, or believe is going to happen in your future. So it's almost like coming down into the third dimension and living in a linear timeline is torturous, because we are connecting ourselves energetically to things that aren't existing anymore, that are not even real. They don't exist. They're not real. They're not in our present moment. And yet, because we are spinning in such a low frequency, we believe that what has happened in our past is still part of our everyday reality. So what is beginning to happen is, as we are shifting and ascending, moving into higher states of consciousness, what that means is the light inside of us, unbeknownst to ourselves, again, I say this all the time in my videos, it's not something you're going to necessarily feel or recognize or be conscious of all the time. But the earth herself, as a beautiful being, and our own beautiful beings are shifting into higher states of consciousness, which means that the energy inside of us, there's more energy and light coming down. Light is energy. More light coming down into physical form. And that light that's coming down into your physical form is spinning faster. It's speeding up that frequency. So what's happening with time, am I yelling? I hope I'm not yelling. What's happening with time is that it's breaking up. The linear timeline is literally, I see it as breaking up. And so what we're beginning to recognize and feel and see are timelines that have been existing throughout our realities, and they are literally both separate, individual kind of timelines that are going like, this is how I see them, kind of like perpendicular to the linear line we've been on. There's all these timelines that we've lived, or we've had an opportunity to live. And there's all these timelines in the future, right? And a timeline is just a reality or a consciousness that you can jump into. That's it. And the more conscious you become of timelines and realities, the more you shift into higher states of consciousness, the more you begin to create your realities, what you want to move into next, which is just a timeline that you can step into in 1 minute and experience it, or step into it for 3 weeks or 2 years, right? We are conscious creator beings. So we have the ability to choose a timeline we want to experience, and when we're done, we choose another one. So this linear line is breaking up. And we are starting to recognize and realize that there are many different timelines that we have lived, and those timelines are not connected to our reality right now, because right now is all that exists. Right now is this now moment. However, as we start to understand time, this is a little bit more challenging. All these realities are happening at the exact same time. So all these aspects of you that may be in the future, all these aspects of you that were in the past are also happening in the now moment. Because there is nothing else but a now moment. And so you can imagine that there's this big bubble of consciousness in our matrix, right? And there's all these realities that are happening. There is no separation between this now and the now that I am and will be at 5 years old. It's all existing in this now moment. And if you start to recognize that, that's a difficult one to grasp. That's a hard one, I think, for a lot of us to understand. But what you can think about is, here's my linear timeline that I've been walking on. And these timelines that I've experienced and may or may not experience are going to break up. And then it's going to be not so linear. It's going to be like, I'm going to jump. I'm going to jump into other spaces. I'm going to jump. I'm going to choose. And I'm going to look back and I'm going to say, wow, I experienced that. And there's a break between that timeline and where I am now. There's a space. I am not energetically connected to it anymore. I am not energetically pulled by it anymore. If you start to consciously hold this as a reality, you break free from your past. And so what you're recognizing is all of these things are separate. right? As you're moving along in your world. Even yesterday, even 2 weeks ago, even a month ago, right? You're becoming more and more separated, detached from your past because it isn't your present. It isn't in the now moment. And then if you start to realize that it's all happening at the exact same time, that time is literally collapsing onto itself, you're starting to feel everything happening all at once. So what does that mean? Okay, if you're starting to feel like everything is happening all at once, it's almost like you're living in your everyday life. You start to have these memories or these ideas or thoughts or pictures, and you can't quite grasp whether it happened in your past, whether it happened yesterday, whether it was a dream, or whether it's happening in the future and you're tapping into it. It's getting kind of confusing. It's like, wait a second, like, when did this happen? When is it happening? I can't remember, right? Those are the things that's how you can start to recognize that time's sort of collapsing onto itself. It's not so clear, it's not so black and white anymore in our minds as to when things happened, if they happened, when did they happen, right? The other thing that's happening with our time is we're losing our memory. And we're actually not losing our memory. We just don't need memory the same way we used to need memory. And what do I mean when I say that? So consciously or unconsciously, when we shift into higher states of consciousness, we are being asked to be in the present moment more and more and more. And unbeknownst to us, we're actually living more and more in our present moment. We're just not aware of it necessarily. When you are living presently, in the present moment, presence, consciousness right here, right? And then going to the next moment and the next moment. You experience that moment just as it is, and then you move to the next. And then you move to the next. And when you turn around every once in a while and look back, you can't remember your days the same way. So somebody will say, what did you do yesterday? And you'll say to yourself, wait a second, what did I do yesterday? And you'll think, oh wait, I went up to the lake and I sat. And it's like, wait a second, that was yesterday? That feels like so long ago, right? It feels like it was, like it happened 3 weeks ago. Because as we shift, time speeds up. And so there's a lot more that's happening in those moments than when it was longer. Again, think back to that tape, that music tape, right? And if you slow the tape down, it takes a really long time to get through one verse of a song. You remember that entire verse much easier. You're in that entire verse for a much longer time, so you can grasp it, you can hold it, you can digest it. You know, you're really in that verse, as opposed to it speeding up. And you hit fast forward in that verse, you experience it, you go through it, but you don't have the same memory. You're like, I know I went through it, I know I experienced it, and I know it was a long verse, but my God, I can't hold it. But you experienced it. That's being more and more in our present moment. Things are speeding up. We're not remembering things the same way as we used to. We don't need to. The more and more you shift into higher states of consciousness, you don't need to remember things. Now, in this matrix that we live in, which is the third dimensional matrix, what we're still in, of course we have to remember things. I understand that. But the way we believe that we need to remember things, we actually don't, right? There's a lot of things we don't necessarily need to remember the same way. When you're living in what everyone calls the new earth, when you're living in a fifth dimensional vibration, when you're actually vibrating at a fifth dimensional frequency, you have no need to remember anything. Anything. Nothing. Because you understand that all that exists is your now moment that's happening here. And so that's what we're starting to experience and shift into. So if you're thinking that you're getting older and you're losing your memory, it could be that you're just living more in a present moment space, right? And so as you're living more and more present, you just aren't remembering in the same way because you don't need to. The same way with understanding that this is the same thing as when we start to think of, let's just say the past week that you've just had, right? It's like, oh my God, so many things are happening in our day-to-day life, we're squeezing so much more in now because frequency is speeding up. So there's a lot more happening in these now moments as opposed to it being slower. Not as much happens in that slower time. Okay, so here you are slowly moving through your day as opposed to this. Right? There's so much more happening. And when there's so much more happening, that's why we're shifting so quickly now. That's why we're accelerating so much faster, because time is speeding up. It's also why we're going to not age in the same way, why we're going to expand our age and how long we live. Again, if you're thinking about the new earth and moving into a fifth dimensional frequency, fifth dimensional humans live for a very long time. One of the reasons that is because there isn't time. Time doesn't exist in the same way. So there isn't this drawn out experience of the human physicality, the human experience. It's not as drawn out, slow. And so age is experienced longer. We live for a lot longer in that fifth dimensional space. It's one of the reasons why. The other reason is the energy spinning so fast that your DNA and your cells are in a crystalline formation. They're not in a carbon based. So they just are experienced differently. They live a lot longer. Totally different subject. Anyways, point is that time is speeding up. Timelines our linear time is breaking up. We're starting to understand that there are different timelines that we've lived in and that we can choose to live in. And beyond that, it's all collapsed into this one moment. So everything's existing in the one moment. Everything is always existing in our one moment. Okay? And we're not attached to what happened in our past. So there are many different paradigms. There are many different realities. Every timeline is a reality. Every timeline has paradigms in them. Every timeline has a consciousness that it exists in, right? And you, as a conscious creator being, have the ability to choose what you are going to walk into. When you hear teachers say, I just jumped a timeline, right? Or what timeline are you living in? All they're saying to you is, listen, there's all these versions of you out there. There's all these versions of you behind you that you've lived. Right? And which ones are you going to hold on to, which should be none. You shouldn't be holding on to any of your old timelines, right? Which timelines do you want to move into? So you just consciously decide where you're going, who you are moving in, an aspect of you that you're moving into, intentions that you're creating. That's a timeline. If you're in a job you don't like, and you want to move into a different job, then you are looking at a different timeline. You are literally looking at a different path that you are going to move into. And that path is you, another aspect, another version of you, okay, doing that work, whatever it may be. And that's what you are connecting to energetically. That's what you are vibrating at, is that aspect of you on that path doing that job. If you're creating a partner in your life, right? You are looking at a version of you in the future, which is also in the now, that is with that partner. Just like your past existed, right? And you turn back and you look, the past existed. You were that 5-year-old. You had that trauma. You had that pain. You lived in those houses. You had those experiences. It's the same thing with the future. The only difference is that you haven't lived it yet. So there's no proof of it. But it's the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing. The key is, for all of us, as we're starting to understand this, is to not be attached. To understand that on an energetic level, as you start to shift into higher states of consciousness, your past is not connected to you. Now, there are memories, because we have memories, like I was saying earlier about memories. As we start progressing into higher states of consciousness, we're not going to remember these now moments the same way as our past, because we experienced our past in a lower state of consciousness. So there's memories held to it. So we are going to remember our past. Okay, we can't get rid of the memories. Sort of like it's just in us. As we shift, they will start to dissolve or crumble, right? But just because you have memories of these things doesn't mean that on an energetic level it is still attached and connected and impacting you. So the other thing you have to realize is, what is a false reality? A false reality is when you are believing so intently that what has happened in your past, in past timelines, is currently happening now. So if you believe that you are unsafe because these things have happened in your past, that you're not safe in relationships, that you're not safe out in the world, that you're not safe being open and communicative, speaking your truth, all these things, right? That's just one example. And this is based on experiences that you've had in the past. Those experiences are done. They're actually not experiences that you're having in this now, present moment. But what happens to us is what has happened from our past, we take with us. Again, think of linear timeline. In a linear time, there's one path, and we're connected to all these things that happen. So as we continue to move through our life, we are taking with us what has happened from our past and creating a reality and a present moment based on the past timelines that we've moved through. And that's not where we're going. That is not how you're going to be living in higher states of consciousness. The way you start to live in a higher state of consciousness is that you understand that you're not linear anymore. That that you live in a multi-dimensional sphere with all these different options, realities, and paradigms to choose in your every present moment. And that what has happened in your past moments, timelines, is past. It's literally a consciousness and experience that no longer exists in this now moment. It doesn't exist in this now moment. But we are programmed to believe that what has happened from our past creates who we are today. And in a lower state of consciousness, that's correct. In a higher state of consciousness, that's not correct at all. Who I am right now in this moment doing this video, I am not connected to my past. Do I have memories of my past? Absolutely. Do I have emotional experiences that are still moving through me that are connected to my past? A tiny bit, a few, sure. Do I have trauma from my past? Absolutely, I've had trauma, a lot of trauma. But I know that in my moment right now, I don't have trauma. In my moment right now, I am not being abused. In my moment right now, I understand that this is the only moment that exists. And then when I move to my next moment, that's it. And so we are shifting out of this. And this is not to say that there isn't anything wrong with shadow work and clearing out and healing. That has to happen. You have to hold all of it. You have to hold that. But can you also hold the knowingness that these old patterns and these old timelines are literally separate? They're not attached to you. And that you have the ability in your present day moment to look around and say, is this my reality? Is what happened in my past my current reality? Is it currently occurring right now? Most of the time, you would say, probably 99% of the time, it's a no. But there are thoughts and beliefs and programs inside of you based on this linear time frame and timeline that tells you that it is, that it's happening now, it's going to happen now, and it's definitely going to happen in your future. Right? Because we are programmed to be on one line. And when you start to understand these lines are breaking up and there isn't a linear line, you're not connected to any of this. You're not connected to any of it. You're not connected to anything in your future, so you can create whatever you want, and you're not connected to anything in your past. Everything just was, just is. Now, is there trauma held in the body? Yes. Are there emotional experiences that are super dense held in the body that need releasing? Yes. Are we doing that? Yes. Can we still do that and not be attached any longer to our past? Yes. You can heal yourself. You can clear yourself. You can move things through in your present moment and not be attached to the past. You don't have to heal yourself by being attached to your past. You can understand what's happened based on a timeline that you were living when you were 10 years old or 16 years old or 3 years old. But can you heal it, move through it, looking at it as a timeline not connected to you anymore? There's a freedom in that. There's an expansion in that. You're not trapped when you start to think about it in that way. And then as we start shifting into higher states of consciousness, even more is going to be given to us. We're going to start to understand more about time and more, right? But this is where a lot of us are right now. And if this resonates with you, great. If it doesn't resonate with you, eventually it probably will, right? So be gentle with wherever you are in terms of time. Time is a really complex thing when we start to dissect it and understand it in our everyday lives, as opposed to just people talking about it like, oh, we're quantum jumping. Well, what the freak does quantum jumping mean? What does that even mean? Quantum jumping? I'll tell you what quantum jumping means, okay? In a very simple elementary term. It means moving from one frequency to another frequency without realizing that you just moved to that other frequency. And what does it mean to move to another frequency? It means that you're all of a sudden living in a way that you weren't living then, 2 seconds ago, 1 second ago, right? So all of a sudden you're living in a more present moment state. All of a sudden the next thing you know, you're living in a more trusting will of God sort of space. All of a sudden you're not as attached to your past, right? These things that's a quantum shift, meaning that there's no linear pattern that took you from point A to point B. You don't remember walking there. You don't remember necessarily even choosing. A quantum leap, a quantum shift happens in the quantum field, which is the no field. It's where things pop up and fall away without any rhyme or reason to it. And you can move into a higher state of awareness, consciousness, experience without realizing that you went there. That's a quantum shift, right? So it's not that complicated at all. Conceptualizing it can be complicated, but if you realize that it's very natural, this is just what's happening to us. And you'll probably look and say, God, I remember waking up one day and feeling completely attached still to my past, and then waking up the next day and all of a sudden it's like, oh, something has shifted. How many times have you guys said, something shifted in me? I feel a little bit shifted. Or today I feel really not so shifted, right? I feel really dense and I feel really attached to things. And the next day you're like, oh my God, that's quantum jumping. That's like moving into higher states of consciousness or another dimension, right? We're doing it all the time. We're just not aware of it. That's all it is. And so start to be aware. Start to be aware, start to be aware, start to be aware. You're not losing your mind. You're not losing your memory, I should say, not mind. We're all losing our minds. You're not losing your memory. You're just being more present. And so you don't need the same type of memories as you did in your past state of consciousness. You're living in the more present. Really, all that matters is that we stay as present as we possibly can. It's just really hard to do that. The other thing is that start to recognize how you are looking back and saying, oh my God, look at how much I've lived in that 1 week. Look at how much has happened. Look at how much I feel as if it's been an entire month. It's only been a week. That's time collapsing. That's time moving in on itself, speeding up, squeezing in. So there's all kinds of stuff that's happening in a small amount of time. Okay? False realities. False realities are when you are so attached to your past timelines, past experiences, past paradigms, past consciousnesses, that you are believing that it is in your now moment when you're actually not experiencing it at all. You're actually not living it. But you believe that you are living it, you're going to live it, you need to prepare to live it. because you've lived it in your past. Well, this is all I know. This is all that's happened to me. So why would this not happen now? Why? Because we aren't on a linear time frame anymore. That's why. You have a choice. You choose the next timeline you're going to move into. You choose the next space. You choose the next now moment. You choose. We have a choice. We have a choice in our everyday next moment. Our every now moment, we choose. No, we are not living in a timeline where we are attached any longer to the linear aspects of our reality, the linear aspects that happened in our past. We are free. We're free. So when you start thinking about your past and saying, well, these are the things that have happened to me in the past, so they're going to happen to me now. Why? No, they're not. They're completely separate aspects. They're completely separate realities. They're completely separate timeline that you lived, that you're not living now, that you're not living in this moment because it's not happening to you. It's not happening to you, right? You may be experiencing within your physical, emotional, mental bodies the pain or the trauma or the beliefs from that past, but it's actually not happening in your reality, right? We're programmed. We don't even think about it. We're like robots, right? We're just moving along and believing. It's not our fault. It's how we have been designed and programmed to live in this third dimensional matrix. But it's not real. It's not real. It's not real. Are you right now experiencing the pain, the trauma, the beliefs that you have back here? The things that you've experienced here, are you experiencing them right now? Most of us will probably no, but we're thinking we're going to, or we believe we've constructed a reality around our past. We've constructed a belief system that we live in based on our past. It's so sad, but we can move out of it. We can move out of it. We can choose. Oh my God, I am constructing a reality. I'm constructing a belief system. I'm constructing my thoughts based on the past experiences that I've had that are no longer happening, that are not in my now moment, that don't exist. They don't even exist. So those are false realities. Those are realities that we're creating based on the past that are not in our moment, but we're creating them based on something that's happened in the past. So we have to be conscious of it. Conscious. And allow yourself to choose. So you start to get conscious of it, right? Am I living in my past, or am I bringing my past with me? Or am I starting to think about the future? The other thing is that we start thinking about the future, right? The future is going to do this. I can't make this big jump in my life, right? Because the future is going to do this. Because the future is going to do this. We put these beliefs and ideas in our heads about the future. Remembering that there are thousands of timelines you can jump into. Nothing is linear, meaning just because you are here now doesn't mean you are on the exact same path and there is an absolute that you're going to move through. There is no absolute. There's all these choices that you have, all these ways in which you can move into whatever reality you want. Again, moving into higher states of consciousness, you understand as a creative being that you can choose any reality you want. You just have to believe it. You have to know it. You have to feel it. That's manifestation in a higher form, right? So get conscious. Get conscious. We are no longer on a linear time frame. Or we have the opportunity to no longer be on a linear time frame. Watch how you're experiencing time. Don't get caught up in people's words, right? Timelines, jumping timelines, quantum shifting, whatever it is that people use. Don't get so caught up in the terms, the wording of it. Just recognize that time is speeding up, right? And when time speeds up, it's just like that radio, that song, right? it starts to go faster and faster and faster. And when that happens, the linear time, the slowness in which we've been living, breaks up. And when that slow life that we've been living breaks up, we start to recognize we're not attached to our past. We're not attached to our present. There's so many different life experiences that we've had, that we could have had, that we have the opportunity to jump into, and they're not attached to any other aspect. They are literally existing in their own field, in their own consciousness, in their own space. And all of this is existing at the exact same time. All of it. I mean, to go even more quantum, there is no such thing as light years. There is no such thing as beings from other planets traveling to us. And it's taking them, a long time to travel. There is no such thing as traveling somewhere when you are a high frequency light being. You exist in the now moment, and then you shift yourself into another space, another dimension, another portal, another place. When you spin your light slower, when you slow down and you start to move into a time that is slower, like us, then you actually have to move through space and time. Then you start to move through something, right? Because you've slowed your frequency down and you're experiencing your consciousness where you're now experiencing moments that are slower. So there's a moment, now I had another moment, now I had another moment, right? And in those moments, it takes time to move somewhere, to shift. So when you slow frequency and energy down, you start to notice moments. When you speed energy up, you don't notice moments anymore. Have you ever had those times where you're with somebody and you're so engrossed with their energy and their frequency, and your own frequency, you can feel yourself vibrate into higher frequency, especially if you've been in portals. If you've ever done a journey into Telos with me, they're 90 minutes and they go by like that because we've shifted ourselves into a higher state of consciousness. We're spinning our frequency, our light, faster. And so those 90 minutes are condensed, collapsed, felt in less time because we're speeding ourselves up and we're not moving through it the same way. So when high frequency light beings slow their frequency down a little bit to begin to come into our field and our reality through ships or through whatever, they have to slow down. They have to start to experience space and time. When in a higher frequency, spinning much faster, there is no space and time in that same sense. They can literally move from one dimension to another dimension, from one space to another space, to one consciousness to another consciousness, by thought and intention. It's not even thought, it's intention. It's their consciousness thinking or intending something, and then there they are, right? So we as scientific space, a scientific community thinks about light years, that's only because we're a third dimensional being. We're a third dimensional human that understands our reality through space and time. But when you start shifting into higher states of consciousness, there's no such thing. Light doesn't move in light. There's no such thing as a light year. Light doesn't move that way when it starts spinning faster and faster, when it moves into higher speeds, higher frequencies, higher dimensions. It doesn't actually move like that. But how we see it right now in our third dimensional space and time and reality is movement. There's a space, there's a here, and there's a now. There's a this point and a that point, and I'm going from here to there. And I've got to move myself because I'm vibrating at such a slow speed that I actually have to physically move something from here to here. When you're spinning in a higher frequency, there's no movement. You're not moving from point A to point B. You are in point A and then you're in point B. Like if anybody's ever seen spirits in their rooms or even light beings in their rooms, they appear and then they're gone, right? Or they'll be in one space and then they'll be in another space, right? If you've ever done etheric traveling, it's the same thing. You can be in one space in your etheric body and the next thing you know, you're in a completely different space in your etheric body. Because the etheric body is vibrating at a much higher frequency than your physical form. And so it can move to different portals, different dimensions, different spaces, because it's energy. And when energy shifts faster and faster, it doesn't move in the same way as our dense physical third dimensional realities. So light years and all of these are things of, the sun's, 700,000, whatever it is, right? The moon's this amount of distance. Yeah, in the third dimension, but not in higher dimensions. And so as we're shifting into higher dimensions, the time's going to collapse. Everything's going to go a lot faster. You're going to experience things much differently. I got off on a tangent, but I'm sure somebody needed to hear that. Anytime I go on my tangents, I always know someone needs to hear it. So I hope this was helpful. I tried to explain it in the best way that I possibly can. Again, it's complicated, but it's also very simple if you just understand energy. And that energy is speeding up. And when energy speeds up, time speeds up. When time speeds up, we eventually step out of the linear and move into this more quantum space where everything's existing at the same time. And remember, you have choice. Remember, you have choice. And remember that you're living more and more in a present moment, whether you're aware of it or not. And how conscious can you get of how you are living? Are you living more in the past, or are you living in the future? Where are you living? What are you choosing? And if you're living in your past, what are the beliefs, the thoughts, the paradigms that you're carrying and holding in your now? Think about it, right? And the choices that you're making in your future, think about what they're based on. When the fear comes in, or the doubt, or the disbelief, where's that coming from? Because these realities that are in front of you, they don't have any hold. There's no linear path, meaning there's no hold. They don't hold any of your current reality, current beliefs. Your future timelines that you're moving into, they don't hold your thoughts that you have right now. They don't hold your beliefs that you have right now. They don't hold your paradigms that you have right now. They're separate. They're unique. So you can choose, I'm going to jump into this space and time and aspect of me. And it doesn't have to have any relevance or bearing on where I've been in my past. It's completely separate. It's completely unique. It's completely detached. And when you start to live in that space, it's very freeing, because anything is possible and anything is a reality when you understand that nothing is attached to you in a linear space. Nothing is based on where you've been. Nothing is based on what your beliefs have been. Nothing is based on the trauma and the pain that you have experienced. Everything is open and available if you can get conscious on where you are in your now moment and where you want to go and where you want to be. And the beliefs and thoughts that are stopping you from moving into that timeline, that version of you, that aspect of you. Okay, I think that's it. I hope this was helpful. I love you all so much. Thank you so much for listening to my videos. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for being on the planet right now and moving through this really accelerated shift in consciousness. We're constantly shifting. So thank you for saying yes, and thank you for being here. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't. Like this video if you like it. If it doesn't resonate, walk away. If it resonates, awesome. Thank you so much. If there's anybody that you know would benefit from listening to this message, send it to them and get it out to them. And I will see you all next time. Love you so much. Bye.